Welcome to a time of holy human stuff. This is the time and the space where we began to reflect on those very ordinary things of life that in fact have holy meaning. My name is Heather Murray Elkins, and I welcome you today to the first of two reflections about a very basic thing in our lives: a brick. It is the means by which human beings have constructed for themselves firm foundations. And because I want us to have a proper beginning so that we have some appreciation for this simple, complex piece of culture, I will read a definition. A brick. It's a block, or a single unit of ceramic material used in masonry construction. It's usually stacked together or laid using different kinds of mortar to hold the bricks together and to make a permanent structure. As I said, the purpose of a brick is to establish a firm foundation. Bricks are usually produced in common or standard sizes and in bulk quantities, and they have been regarded as the longest lasting and strongest building material throughout human history. So, a brick is not of much value in and of itself. You need a lot of bricks. But if you notice my shelf, I am obviously attracted to single bricks of varying sizes and proportions, because a single brick that has a history is also a portion of life that we can learn to stand on, a firm foundation in itself. So today we're going to explore some of these bricks, one by one, to see what kind of story they tell us about ourselves. Now, this is a very long history. 7500 BC is the earliest evidence that has been found in archaeology of this and this structure. 7000 BC, there are evidences of bricks in the place we call Jericho. And 4000 BC, there are bricks that are located in a place known as, in terms of scripture, the place from which Abraham set out, which is now called Iraq. So there's a way in which the story of brick and the gospel weave together. I have only to also remind you that there's a story that takes place in Egypt about bricks and slavery, and a pharaoh commanding the people of Israel to make bricks without straw. So another way you might tell the story of human relationship and bricks is to say the first organized strike in history took place in Egypt, and it was about bricks. They were forced to make them without straw, and there was a strike. The first recorded one in history that we recognize as being part of Scripture. So I invite you to enter into the life of a brick that also reveals something about who we are. And I have to begin this conversation with a confession. The link to bricks in my particular life probably comes because, if you note, my middle name is Murray. That is a Scot name. That is a clan name. It was important for me to realize that some of my attraction for this particular structure of culture is potentially connected to being a Scot. Because, as I learned, studied Western history, one of the things I discovered was that when the Roman Empire pushed its conquest into the areas that we now call Scotland, they discovered that Scots were particularly good at making brick. So when they would conquer an area, they would identify good brick makers, and they would be taken to Rome. And many of the structures in Rome that in fact continue to stand were built by Scot slaves, many slaves, but in particular Scot slaves when it came to making bricks. One example I have here, and it has to do with the Emperor Hadrian's villa in Tivoli, Italy, and this is 120 AD. A brick from the Emperor Hadrian, who was known for preferring Scot slave brick builders. And so this is some of my DNA. That would be one way to look at it. But it is also another way to tell a wholly human story, as Christianity also connected with this story. We move to another important connection between clay and bricks and the gospel and an empire. This is not a brick, but it is the means of brick making, and this comes from the catacombs in Rome of Saint Sebastian, 350 AD. Where did the clay come from to make palaces, buildings, houses in Rome? Much of it came from the area outside Rome where Christians were permitted to dig and bury their saints, those they had lost, some of whom were martyred. Because this kind of soil outside the city of Rome, in what is now called catacombs, was really good soil for bricks. And there was even an economic reality to this, as the Christians sometimes labored to protect and honor their dead. They would dig the soil out. They would have to carry it to the city, and it was in fact marked for sale. They would be able to trade space for money, and that clay became a brick. And sometimes the same one who dug it out to bury the dead was the one who made bricks out of it for the Roman Empire. So when you talk about what is the foundation on which Rome stands, some of it came from the soil out of which those we call Christians, followers of the way, dug and had to pay for the privilege of digging it. And then that soil became bricks, as well as the place where the beloved of Christ were buried. The other history that is really important is a structure marked by brick called the Forum. And this is Rome 7th through the 4th century. Forum, a place where free citizens would gather in a common space to speak about and for and debate what it meant to be a citizen. So this particular brick and that connection to what we understand our responsibilities now in this community and in this nation, the idea that there would be a public space where all those citizens could gather and debate and help those who were appointed to represent them guide them wisely. This is, in fact, a foundation piece. It's a brick. How firm a foundation. We have a history, and this is one way to tell it.